everyone. Welcome to Motivation in That. I'm Natalie. I am your host, and I am so excited to be joined by one of my just kind of best friends of the weird way that you meet people, Jordan, who's coming on to talk about kind of a continuation of the first conversation that I had on the solo episode, dealing with kind of parents and how they've impacted us through life. And it's funny because you'll hear as Jordan and I chat today that we're from a very different kind of family structure and yet have a lot of the same traumas I think that we've been navigating through and working through over time. So I think it's going to be a really awesome, robust discussion. We've got a couple articles we're going to touch on, scientific-y, not so scientific-y, and both great. But with that, I want to introduce Jordan to everyone who is on here. Jordan is in the DC area now, but we actually met when you were in Vegas, which I
Yeah.
had to remind myself. I'm like, we've known each other since what, 2020 is when we met in DC. Is that when you moved?
2021 is when we met, but we met like first when I lived in Vegas, yeah, in 2020.
Through a clothing brand because we both liked the sports bras that they had. And that is the power of social media, right? brings
Hmm.
brings weird kind of relationships together. You happen to be in DC right when I took a job that was putting me in DC. It's like post-COVID times, no one's around, the city's dead. We're probably going to talk about that in a separate episode of like why the heck would you pick up and leave Vegas and come to DC? And thankfully
Yeah.
I loved it because every time I went down, I got to see you. So, but over that course, I remember, I think it was the second time I came to visit, and we sat on a couple of chairs outside of, what was it, Jubilee Ice Cream or something?
Oh, yeah, Ice Cream Jubilee down at Navy Yard.
Yeah,
Yes, at the
because it was
waterfront.
like weirdly warm and we ate
Yeah.
pasta outside and we're sitting there
Yeah.
and like we're looking at each other as we're talking about our parents. And like the moments are happening and we're like, oh gosh, where have you been my whole life? I needed
Hmm.
this.
Like I think we both literally said that a couple of times that night. Was like, what? How are we the same? Are we twins? Like, what's happening? Yes.
And since then, even though we only got to see each other maybe once every other month or so, we've stayed in contact. It's a great, I think, friendship to see us both grow. And I mean, talk about the growth that we've had. I mean, we'll get into that as we navigate kind of what your experience has been as you've gone through this move and everything with your parents. But, in the middle of that, you've changed jobs. You're on another shift now. You got your own business, Orchid
Uh-huh.
Virtual Consulting, which is for interior designers, which this is where we get to talk about kind of how you connect with your family because your sister is this fantastic interior designer. So you started this project management, with her in mind, and now you've got this awesome skill set. If we're listening, anyone's listening that does kind of interior design or any of that kind of stuff, hit Jordan up for some project management skills. The girl will keep you straight. So just we'll tag her business on here. But when we talk about like our DC life, I'm now ex-federal.
Uh-huh.
You're just a passionate person about the politics side. We'll hit that in
Yes.
probably a little,
At
little later
some
on,
point. Yeah.
um, but I think talking about that, you've got this beautiful, beautiful relationship with your sister, and I know that each one of your siblings, and you're one of how many?
Six. I'm the
Four.
fourth of six.
Yeah, I'm one of one. So,
That
uh,
just means you're non-replicatable. Is that a word?
yeah,
Replicable? What's the whatever the word is?
just that special.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
uh, each of you seems to have a very different relationship, not only with each other, but with your parents. And
Mhm.
you kind of came up in a very different fashion than maybe a lot of people have. And what folks probably don't know about you is you've done some stand-up comedy on the side to really kind of bring light to these experiences. So I know that folks listening may hear us kind of laugh, and you and
Uh-huh.
I deal with humor through some of the things that probably are not humorous whatsoever. But
I mean, they're not, but it's either that or cry, and one is more fun. And we've already done the other one, so.
right, exactly. So tell me a little bit about kind of how you grew up, because today's conversation is going to be kind of like, I think we talked about gaslighting and how when you don't grow up with a safe place,
Mhm.
that can be not, it's not a physically safe conversation, but even a mentally, emotionally safe location. And
Mhm.
how do you create that space for you later on? So that's the journey we're probably going to go on here. I'll talk a little bit about mine, but I want you to open up like how one of six in Northern America, right?
Mhm. Yep. Southwest Wisconsin. So
Hmm.
definitely northern Midwest. Um, Out in the country. Grew up outside a very small town, and also I was homeschooled, which kind of was its own beast. Um, and I guess probably did not maybe actually contributed to a lot of the traumas that I did experience, and certainly didn't help any of them. Also very evangelical. My parents were super Christian, very conservative, very right wing leaning. Um, so everything was purity culture and all of that. So there was a lot of um, just shame in being a woman, in every experience that I had, in the fact that if anybody was ever attracted to me, that was somehow my fault and my problem, and I was this terrible person. It's just the amount of shame that came from that, that then it, created the person that I grew up to be. When I moved to Chicago, I had no idea how to set a boundary. I had no idea how to tell if somebody was a terrible person. Um, so gaslighting worked really well on me. Speaking of that, because I would be like, I don't know, this feels weird, and they'd be like, no, it doesn't. And I'd be like, oh, I guess it probably doesn't then.
But I
Like,
mean, small town Wisconsin
uh-huh.
to it's not just what going to college. It was college in a gigantic city
In Chicago,
around.
inner city Chicago.
I mean, talk about a diversity of cultures
Mhm.
where it's
Mhm.
not all an evangelical homeschooling environment, and it's not
Yeah.
even a typical public school environment. That is
Yes.
a whole different ballgame.
It was weird too because I, you know, in, I think I grew up seeing maybe five black people in my life before I went to college. And it wasn't like I was raised to be racist or anything like that. I just was genuinely ignorant to cultures outside of my own. So then when I moved to Chicago and I went to that school and I honestly was in the minority, I had no idea what to do, like how to relate to anybody. I took offense a lot of stuff that I shouldn't have. And then also was, I'm sure, very offensive in unintentionally as well. Um, and there's so that just goes to so many things too, like religion and politics and culture and race. Like it's just such an all-encompassing thing when you're so isolated and not when you're told that you're being taught to think critically and examine stuff critically and form your own opinions and have your own viewpoint and be able to defend that viewpoint. And then you're told that if it's any viewpoint or opinions other than the ones that the the teacher holds that you're wrong, well, fuck. Like, how do you? What do you do? I
Hmm.
that's a that's a I don't even know the word. That's a difficult thing to sort through and recognize and process and unlearn.
So growing up being one of the younger ones in the family, I mean, did any of your siblings ever come around and say, "Oh, this is what life's like when you are gone"? Like,
Yes, actually, shout out to my brothers because so again with the purity culture and the how men and women relate to each other in evangelicalism, we weren't supposed to be dating. We weren't supposed to have any physical contact, anything before marriage. It was this very like, you don't date, you court, and you only do that when you're both ready for marriage. And the guy has to ask the parents, and you can never be alone, and all this nonsense, right? Well, my entire senior year in high school, I was 18. So I was kind of like, what are you going to do? And I was dating this very sweet boy from my church. And like he was really nice. My parents actually kind of liked him, but despite the fact that they disapproved of him, but it was still very much like you shouldn't be around each other or whatever. So we kind of had that mindset. Well, my brothers, both of whom had already gone to college, were gone. And then their my oldest brother's wife and my other brother's girlfriend, they all were there for Christmas one year, my senior year, and they sat me down and they gave me a book that was called Hot Sex: How to Do It, and they were like, "This is information you may not need right now, but you're not going to get it here. So you're going to college in Chicago next year. Like this is important stuff that you will never learn from your parents." And it was a lot of stuff about just like how to, I mean, accept your body and get to know your body a little bit, and then also information about STIs and testing and care and safety and all these things that truly I never would have learned anywhere else or even thought to try to learn for myself because I didn't know anything that existed. So as far as telling me about things outside the house, that was really the only thing, the only treatment, not treatment, but the only warning that I got was that.
So, as you were kind of, I think, maturing in this area, and it's a whole different world of isolation. So, I mean, I was only child, so my isolation was there was no one else to talk to other than my mom and my dad, and
Right.
maybe the friends like you that they approved of because my mother vetted the people that I got to spend time
Same.
with. 100,
Mm-hmm.
and it was usually the children of the friends that she had, because if she didn't like the parents, then I couldn't hang out with the kids is the same because they didn't agree on things.
Well, it
And
automatically made the kids a bad influence.
right,
Like,
exactly.
obviously.
Right. And, Catholic school, but I still was like one of, eight girls in the class and everything. But that isolation being like weirdly different, but you at least knew that there were other ways to live life because you could kind
Uh-huh.
of see it. And if it may have created a weird kind of jealousy component, I will never forget. And that had you gone to Catholic school, I guarantee you your parents probably would have been the ones like my mom who said, you cannot hem your skirt uniform.
Oh, yeah. Oh my God, yeah. I couldn't even
That
wear
sucker
spaghetti
was
straps or
past
like tank top. Like, oh my God.
that
They
was
would have been like,
past
can
the
we
knees.
lengthen it
And I was like,
actually?
come on, I want to look cute. Not like sexual. You want to look cute, not
Yeah.
like dowdy. And my mom was like, oh no, you are not like that. And so it's funny because it wasn't, I mean, my mom was not religious. We were
Mhm.
spiritual. She had psalm cards, but I got myself baptized at age 8 because I wanted to drink the wine. That was my
That a girl.
reasoning for going to catechism, going through the classes, because I was like,
Is
I
it
want to
real
drink the
wine?
wine.
Is it real wine when you're like 8, 9 years
Mhm.
old?
Oh yeah, you allowed to sip that all day.
Oh my God. See, I learned something new. I didn't know that actually. I thought they
Yeah.
didn't like actually give you real wine. I thought it was like, because we would get grape juice when we had communion once a month at my church because alcohol was not allowed inside the doors of the church. Like, how dare you?
It's not alcohol, it's the blood of Christ, Jordan.
That makes it grosser. That's all it does. Why are we talking about cannibalism? This is weird.
And I just want to say,
Anyway.
look, I appreciated when I was an altar server. Like I
Mhm.
think religion is a very complicated topic, and the beliefs that people
Yeah.
have are embedded the way that they are. I think it's interesting when you start growing up and you look back and you're like,
Right.
I don't know about that. How early
Right.
should we have learned some of those things?
Hmm.
But that's where kind of I think it comes to this idea of when you hear things and they become like reality, like they're real to us because it's
Hmm.
what has been ingrained during times of formation. And it's
Hmm.
the one article that we'll link, I think it's an actual NIH article. I think it's from Harvard. So persistent fear and anxiety affecting young children's learning and development. And it was a fascinating read because it's the more kind of scientific thought process. But
Hmm.
it was funny because I was picturing other children I know who react in these ways when they are, going through, you're like, why is that kid freaking out? Like this is over nothing. And I thought back and I'm interested on your experience to some of this because they talked about, well, when you were constantly in situations where you weren't safe psychologically,
Hmm.
physically, emotionally, and it reinforced to you that you couldn't ever be safe.
Yeah.
I will never forget going to Disney on Ice and my mom going, okay, find our seats for us. And I was eight,
Uh-huh.
nine. And I got the tickets and I'm pumped. I'm like, yeah, I'm an usher. I blow past the usher. I'm like, I know where our seats are. We sit down, lights go down, and here comes the usher with the flashlight. Because guess what? We ain't in our seats. We're in someone else's seats.
Awkward.
And during Disney on Ice, I am getting reamed out about the
Oh,
fact that I couldn't read the tickets and get the right seats, and how dare I embarrass her and upset everyone around us by having to move while the show is going on. And I tell you what, do you think I ever get up from anywhere once a show starts?
guessing not.
No, and I generally ask an usher, even if I know damn well I've sat in that seat 25 times, that's my seat. I will still go, oh, look, here's our seat. It's there, right? And then get the validation. And I was like, oh my God, I'm that person.
It makes sense though. I mean, again, even like when your brain is learning things, you you learn the thing. And it's like the
So,
article was saying, you have to actively unlearn it, and that takes a lot of trust and vulnerability and trust in yourself that it's okay to be wrong and grace, and there's a lot that goes into unlearning.
well, and
So
so that's what I was
we'll
going to
talk
say.
about.
What are some of the things as you kind of are on this journey and looking back, and what you're 20, you and I are 20 years removed from really kind of the major shift out of that
Mhm.
parent-child piece. What have been some of the hardest things to unlearn as you've gone that you've realized you need to?
Um, People pleasing,
Hmm.
because again, and I'll be the first to say I still do it, even unconsciously. I was actually talking to my therapist about my work situation the other day, which you know some stuff about. But it was a really toxic and terrible work environment. But the thing that we were talking about was I was saying to her, like, I don't understand why people get so upset at me when I am, like, if I'm kind of the squeaky wheel in a situation, because I'm not doing it to be an asshole. I'm genuinely doing it because I'm trying to make things better for people around me. And she said, well, isn't that a form of people pleasing? And I was like, God damn it. Like, what are you doing to me right now? It was actually a really difficult session, and it's one of like three times in the 5 years that we've been in this therapeutic relationship when I can remember being angry at her. And I even told her, I'm like, I'm mad at you for saying that. I don't know why, but I am. Um, so yeah, the people pleasing, that's a big thing. And it's really hard to set boundaries, to set healthy boundaries, and to stand up for yourself and to ask for the things that you need when you're so terrified that someone will be upset, displeased, annoyed, even any kind of passing thought of like any kind of reaction like that is enough still to this day to trigger me into a whole spiral. And I've gotten to a point with that where I can usually wrap it up in a matter of minutes, but clearly I still have more work to do. Um,
Well, and on that, before you
yeah.
jump into the next
Mhm.
one, I think that there's people that are listening that are probably like, I don't care what anyone thinks of me. And so what if they're mad at me? Like they're an
Mhm.
adult, get over it. That's been one of the things that's been hard for me to learn is we're all adults and
Mhm.
no one probably cares if I'm upset at them. So why am I worried if they're upset? So like when you were growing up, if
Uh-huh.
you didn't keep the peace or if you disturbed the balance, what happened? Why would we be so scared of something like that?
It was, um, it was always a problem. You know, if I upset my mother in particular, she never really cared if I made dad mad. But if I upset her, or if she felt offended in some way by something that I said or did, or the way I rolled my eyes, or the fact that I rolled, you know, any of those things, right? She had the kind of personality and kind of energy that the entire house could feel. And so her moods would dictate the mood of the house. And it would often be, you know, when she was upset or angry, whether it was at me or someone else, everything else would be magnified. The tiniest little thing that on a good day would go unnoticed. Nobody would care. All of a sudden, now it's this huge fight. Everybody's mad. There's confusion about what even started it. Like, I don't understand how we got to this point. And it was just a lot of constant walking on eggshells of like, don't make mom mad, don't, whatever. I remember there was a stair, or like one of the steps on the stairs, and it was the fourth one down from the top at my house, and it squeaked. And it was like a lot of the stairs squeaked, but that specific squeak terrifies me. I literally will still hear that squeak in my dreams sometimes, because I would be terrified when mom came upstairs, like to our rooms or whatever, because it usually always meant we were in trouble. Not like always, always, but usually there was something. So things like that, it, it's just you learn to be so well attuned to the energy of others that the minute something shifts, that you notice it immediately. First of all, whether it's over a text message, a phone call, in person, doesn't matter. You notice it, and then you immediately personalize it and you take it on as your own without even necessarily realizing that. And that becomes a burden that is impossible to carry, but you don't even know it's there. So getting to a point of kind of reversing that immediate survival instinct to take on everybody's emotional labor in an effort to save yourself. Ooh, that one's tough. That's probably going to be a lifelong thing for me. And it has bled over into every single relationship I've ever had: friendship, work relationship, romantic relationship, everything.
Well, and it's funny, and I don't know if, as I'm in therapy too, Jordan and I,
Mm,
huge advocates of therapy, if you hear us
yes,
mentioning
we
it.
are.
But when I've talked about some of those things with my therapist, I always end up closing it up with, does that mean I'm a narcissist? Because I'm like, why am I so focused on me? And
Hmm.
my therapist goes, are you serious? Narcissists don't ask if they're narcissists. So
Okay, I have a really funny story about that though. Not to interrupt you,
no,
but
you're good.
this is so okay. 5 years ago, and Natalie, you know this story, but 5 years ago, some like crazy shit got broken open in my family about like some childhood stuff that went on. Um, and it was a pretty significant bombshell. And kind of a few months later, after all this came out, my entire family, we all met at a neutral location, and had kind of a family conversation. We literally hired a mediator to come in to make sure that we didn't go off the rails fighting and screaming at each other. We had an agenda of how we wanted to talk about things and the stuff we wanted to talk about, made sure everybody had specific time to say things. Anyway, we were very intentional about this. And one of the things that every single person, except for my parents, said was one of the problems in this family is mom's narcissism, and kind of this, and there was a lot of grace, I think, in that, of like, it is a disorder, and it is very often not the fault of the person who has it. It is indicative of previous unhealed traumas that they themselves have suffered. And there's a recognition there, but also you're causing harm. So this conversation kind of came up, and everybody has this same perspective on it. And she she was telling us all in this conversation, trying to kind of defend herself and be like, I've gone to therapy and I asked her if I was a narcissist. And she said no. And you know how I know, Linda? Because you would never ask. Okay. All right.
Well, now I'm going to think I'm a narcissist, Jordan.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to ruin it for you. If it makes you feel any better, I also have that same terror. And like sometimes if I find myself talking about myself in the conversation, even with just a friend, I'll be like, were we talking about me? I'm really sorry. Did I interrupt you? My fault. Keep going. I did that yesterday with Jolene, and she was like, well, yeah, just go. We were done with me. Keep talking. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. It's
Well, and
just,
that's another topic we should chat about is like the power of those labels, right? So
Mhm.
we even in doing that, we weaponize narcissism. And I think what you mentioned,
Mhm.
which is no, it's something that people that have it I can't even imagine having to kind of fight with that, especially given
Mhm,
how socially unacceptable it can be in a lot of
mhm,
instances. And we both have mothers that are like that won't
mhm,
tell them. I mean, everyone else is but them.
mhm.
And, navigating that. And the other thing you bring up is this family intervention, right? You had this mediation session, and
Mhm.
not to spill the beans, but you've broken up with your parents basically, right? Since
I did.
yeah.
Yeah.
So family mediation, maybe have been was it good for the siblings, but maybe didn't.
It was good. Like, it was good at the time, and it did spark a lot of conversation, like you said, between the siblings. Some of the stuff that was talked about was inter-sibling relation stuff too. So that actually is much improved because of the stuff that was talked about and discussed, brought out into the open and acknowledged. And the six of us, we're all pretty good with each other. I am the only one of the six who has broken up with my parents. I actually just did that in December. So this conversation that we were talking about happened in 2020. God, 5 years ago. Yeah, so 2020. Um, and I only ended up just breaking up with my parents this past December, which was hard because also when all this stuff kind of broke in 2020, my mom and I were estranged for a few months, like prior to that intervention. And then, but not my dad. I still talk to my dad. Now my dad's out of the picture as well, which was heartbreaking and still is. I might cry.
Well, and I think too, the fact that you're the only one that's done it. So when you talk to your siblings, they may still be bringing up, or, there's a grieving that's a part of that process that's
Well,
really tough, I think.
uh,
And you've got one dynamic every time I think of breaking up with my mom, which I've only done once in my life. I just go, God, I'm the only child, which means even if I break up with her, I'm still the power of attorney. Damn it. And
that's
I'm
a lot
still
of
gonna have
pressure.
to execute the will, it's still get, all, and that sounds so morbid, but there's a component of literally, I don't know who else would do any of that. And because I am kin and I am the only kin, it's
You kind
me.
of have to. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that was the other article, and we'll kind of bounce between the two, but it was ironically a cosmopolitan article. Cosmo's got some good stuff every now and then.
They do every once in a while. And also,
Mhm.
like, it brings me back to like those really innocent and naive, like, kind of pure early 20s where
Yeah.
everything kind of seemed possible. And you were like, oh, I can go from day to night so easily if I just get this cute little pencil skirt.
It
Anyway,
almost seems like there's some harder hitting stuff now, but
yeah.
and you can tell it was kind of geared more towards 30 and down. So more
Mhm.
of that, getting into the Gen Z conversation probably.
Yeah.
We're elder millennials, so, we're still in this. I consider us still very young.
Well, we
Um,
are, obviously.
but it was
Look how
why
pretty and young we look.
exactly. Gray hairs hidden right now. But the reason young people are cutting off their parents and to have the ability to do that, and I don't know, it got my brain going crazy because it's a world where family is spread out. They live in different places. You stay in contact almost more easily now because of social media, because of
Mhm.
cell phones. You don't have to wait for someone to be home next to a landline to get in touch with
Mhm.
them, planes, all that good stuff. But it also has created this sense of I can create my own family somewhere.
Mhm.
I don't need you.
Yeah.
And so I cracked up when I started reading it. I'm like, oh, Jordan is who they're talking about because literally the first person in it is Jordan from my Baptist church.
Very
And
similar. I
yeah,
was
so
reading it. I was like, is this, I don't remember this interview, but is this me?
but I mean, could you see yourself in some of that? And was it
Oh, yeah.
like I had a moment of being envious going, well, I wish I could have been as like tough as them and done it and stuck to it.
Yeah. It is, I don't know if I want to say that it's like a strength thing or like you need to be tough. You do. I have, okay, my brain's going crazy here, so I apologize for the disjointedness. There's a lot of things that I wish I could like call my parents and talk to them about. Mostly right now though, I'm just angry. So that does help with the like holding that boundary because I'm very much like, well, I don't want to call them and scream at them. And also, nothing good is going to come out of it because their opinions haven't changed and their perspectives haven't changed. So, what are we even doing? Um, but to your point, when you said, it's easier to keep in touch because there's social media and cell phones and all this stuff, like this era of constant availability, I think has been bad, not just for friendships and work life balance and all this stuff, but also for families because now you're like, oh, like if there's somebody that you don't get along with quite as much, if they like you more than you like them and they're constantly calling you or whatever, then it's just annoying instead of being like, you know, I'm excited because I only hear from you every 2 weeks or something like that. You know what I mean? Absence really can make the heart grow fonder. And it is, they actually talked about that in the article as well, that a lot of these people who are separating from their families in that way, they genuinely hope that that estrangement will ultimately lead to them being closer. And that I think is a very misunderstood part of it by maybe the generation before us, like our parents. They don't see it as this is an opportunity for me to actually like look in the mirror and see if maybe I need to make some changes. They see it as a personal affront to them, which it is, but also it's we don't take this lightly. It is not an easy thing to do. And I even said this to my parents like, I recognize what else I am potentially giving up when I do this. Like, this is family vacations. This is time with my siblings. This is like holidays and things like that that I will never be spending with you guys because you're there. And I had to make that choice. That's really hard. And I still cry about it multiple times a week.
Well, and I
So,
think, one of the things in the art, there were two things that jumped out at me in that Cosmo article, and one of them was the component of when, first off, the 27% of people, what was it, under 30 are like estranged from their
yeah,
parents, which is wild, and they think the number's higher because,
right.
and you and I have been through dating in our 30s, trying to explain that to someone of why you don't have a relationship with your parents without it either making it sound like you're coming from a crazy place or
Mm-hmm.
you're the crazy one, like
Mm-hmm.
it's just like there's not just a simple way to say, yeah, there I
Right.
don't have anything to do with them because people are like, what do you mean?
They're
And
your parents. You only get one pair.
right, they're
Okay.
your blood. They raised you. And I'm like, and you know what they did?
Yeah.
Like, I have that battle with my mom all the time where I'm just like, and my dad even when he got sick and kind of walked out for a while, of you wanted me.
Mm-hmm.
And this is still I didn't ask for you. I would have asked for
Right.
some different parents, probably a different mom for sure.
Right.
Bless her
And,
heart, but and now I've got to literally stuck with some of this, and
right.
so
And they want credit for it. They're like, "Do you know all the things I did for you? I didn't. I didn't walk here by myself. What? You kept me alive. That's the bare fucking minimum. Nobody gets
so
a gold star for doing the bare fucking. Anyway.
Well, so I want to go back to the family thing because it sounds like, your siblings are still talking to you. And I can see that there are probably folks that are listening to this going, well, if I cut my parents off, I cut everyone potentially.
They might, and I think a lot of that depends on the family dynamic. Uh, for my older siblings, I know kind of from the well, maybe the biggest reason that my brothers in particular still talk to my parents is because they have children and they don't want to deny their kids the ability to have a relationship with their grandparents. Um, but also everybody does have like my relationship with my parents is not everyone else's, and they didn't have the same experience. They had different, you know, issues and traumas and whatever else. Some of them wouldn't even say that they had traumas. Um, but the nice thing about my siblings is that they understand where I'm coming from. And I'm very blessed in that regard that every one of them has said like we're not going to choose. necessarily, which is fine. I wouldn't want them to anyway. But they have all respected my wish of like, please don't talk about me to them. And they do that. They won't put themselves in the middle, even if my parents kind of try to do that. Um, my grandma, bless her heart, my dad's mom, she forgets. She's 91. She's a Spitfire, but she's 91. And she forgets that I don't talk to them. She also doesn't know the reason why. So, um, but she will regularly be like, "Oh, have you talked to your parents lately?" And I was like, "No." And she's like, "Okay, well, here's everything that's going on with them." I'm like, "Cool, thanks, Grandma. Love it." But it's not bad. I still love them and want good things for them, and I'm sad that they're not in my life. But I do think one thing anybody who is listening maybe should consider is like if you are worried about losing a relationship with your siblings, if you do choose to set a boundary with your parents, talk to your siblings first and just see and let them know like I'm not asking you to choose. This has nothing to do with you. The one thing I would say is just protect that boundary by all you need to say is I'm not getting in the middle and then move on. And if your siblings won't enforce that, well, now you have a choice to make. Or if they won't be around you, that's another decision to make, which is hard, but you have to do what is ultimately the best for you and your mental health in the
Well, and
long
even
term.
in the opposite, if you have a sibling that wants to break up with your parents, or a family member or a
Mm-hmm.
friend that's going through it, I have friends that their parents are like my parents. And the thought of one of them coming out and being like, I'm done with them, I would be like, that's going to be
Ooh,
awkward,
yeah.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's good to see the full kind of 360 perspective on that.
Yeah.
So I want to touch back on as we kind of get into the wrap up of this episode. There will be lots more to come. But when you read either of those articles, the persistence fear or the family estrangement one, what jumped out to you as something that was like, oh, that makes sense?
There is a part where it talks about, and I did highlight it because I'm an overachiever. Um,
With like
there's,
3 hours notice, that's my favorite part.
I did do that. Um, So, a section where it talks about science tells us that unlearning fear is fundamentally a different process from learning fear, which is the part that you had kind of highlighted to me as well. But in that same paragraph, it says fears are not just passively forgotten over time, they must be actively unlearned. And you actually have to have more brain development in order to unlearn them. So, it actually made a lot of things kind of make sense for me because there were so many things. Let me back up. Made a lot of things make sense because you actually have to grow and develop as a person and develop cognitively in order to even start working on this stuff. So the traumas that you experience, if you experience them as a very young child, and all of the impact that that has on your developmental process, you have to actually be a grown up before you can even start to work on it. And by that point, there's so much damage. And I find that fundamentally unfair, not just for myself, but because this happens to kids all the time, every single day, by the thousands, by the millions, kids who are dealing with this. And then they become adults who may or may not have access to someone who loves and cares about them and is willing to provide a safe space for them to sort through this. And the connection between experiencing any kind of trauma, but particularly a type of anything psychological or physical or whatever that makes you feel unsafe for an extended period of time, to an adult who can't function properly, is mentally disordered and dysfunctional, and then continues to perpetuate that to people in their lives or to their own children. It's crystal clear. But how do you fix that? I don't know. Like,
Yeah, and I think when there was a line in there that even made it more scary and ironically was the inability to differentiate threat from safety, right?
oh
And
yes, oh my God, yes,
I mean, they
that's
called
another
it
one.
out, so of course but it's that if you can't even tell what's safety and what's a threat because of what's been kind of told to you or ingrained in you or taught to you, then how do you reinforce things kind of the right way? Quick, just you'll crack up when you hear this, and so will others.
Mhm.
And it's a weird story, but so funny and timely. My mom always used to yell at me like a little kid, nightgown on. She's like, make sure you got your underwear on. Like, don't be running around because your nightgown might fly up or anything. Purity culture, kind of
Yeah.
same. And I did not believe in going commando for I can't even tell you how many years because, or even like anything, it was granny panties all day, every day.
I still struggle. I'm not even gonna lie because I'm similar. I still have a hard time.
Comfort space for anyone that feels the same listening. And the other day, one of the cats was downstairs because we have 90 rescue cats in the house, and had her claw stuck in something. And I go running downstairs in my towel, forgetting that we have a ring camera set up in our living room, shoot straight down. And I bent over to check on her. And I'm not a little girl, and towels aren't made to really cover everything. And it wasn't, I didn't even realize that. Like, it crossed my mind for a second of like, oh God, that's probably on the ring camera. And we go out to breakfast with my sister-in-law and her husband, and I'm like, "Look at all these crazy cats in our house." And do you know that somehow, out of 3 hours of morning video footage, the one that I pull up and whip around to my sister-in-law and her husband is the one of Natalie bent over where the towel only comes down to a certain spot. And I am horrified. I
This is
try
my
to play it
favorite
off.
story
I'm like,
ever.
"Oh, I'm healing. Like, it's cool. Like, I'm fine." And then I spiraled and I spiraled and I'm like,
Oh,
this is why she told me to always have underwear on
uh-huh.
and spiral. And then later that day, Josh comes down and does the same thing in front of the camera to make me feel better. And I spiral again because I'm like, I shouldn't have, no one should have to do that. And
Uh-huh.
it's those weird things. I'm like, and I'm thinking he's thinking something about me. I'm like, what is my
Yeah.
sister-in-law thinking? What is her husband thinking? Like, for crying out loud. All because my mom ingrained in me that that was a horrible thing to
Mm-hmm.
have. It was a mistake. It's not out on the internet somewhere. It's not like
It
I'm not
wasn't even well, I guess it was a
even
mistake, but like just because you like accidentally showed them that part, I was thinking like doing it wasn't a mistake. You're in your own house.
no, the whole thing's a mistake. And I mean like the restaurant didn't see it. It wasn't on some big it just yeah. So, but that should have been a fun, safe, weird, fun story, which it is now because I've processed really hard and had a lot of conversations with Josh about it and talked to a couple friends, and stuff, and they've all kind of like talked me down. But I mean, my God, how many situations are we in? And people are like, goes back to the beginning, right? Why are you
Mm-hmm.
acting that way?
Mm-hmm.
What the heck are you spiraling about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another thing that I guess sort of ties into this with the memory aspect of it was where it talks about um, how chronic fear early in life affects the development of like stress response hormones and the stress response symptoms, which that's another whole thing about how you have all this extra cortisol and then your body doesn't know how to release it and it leads to weight gain and health problems and all that. But that's a whole separate thing. But this talks about how it has a dramatic impact on how memories are processed and stored. And I had always grown up thinking, and there's some science about this too, but that if you experience a memory while you're being actively traumatized, that memory is faulty, right? Like and it's not faulty. It might be disjointed. It might not be in a linear fashion, but what I'm learning too in additional research is that that memory is generally going to be the strongest and most accurate memories like you'll ever have. And that's what was in this article too that kind of hit me. Because there's so many things where like people have told me that my memories of these moments, I must just be making it up or I'm getting it wrong or whatever. And I'm like, no, but like this is crystal clear. Like I can tell you what you were wearing, what the air smelled like how my shirt felt on my skin. How is that true? But then there's other times where I have complete dark spots and it's like happy memories. And that's what was in this article too, was like you lose the ability to create a normal memory because if you're not being actively threatened, your brain's just like, I'm taking a break, I'm out. And I literally did cry about that part because there's so many times when I've been told you're remembering it wrong, and it goes back to kind of that gaslighting of like, well, it couldn't possibly be that because, well, that would put so and so in a bad light or whatever. And you spend all this time thinking you're crazy, and you're not actually. You actually have the real memories of what happened. I
Well,
got a
and
rash.
as you're saying that, all I can picture is the movie Inside Out, right? With the core memories. And it makes me think in our brains as growing up, our joy, our little joy,
Uh-huh.
was kind of tied up in the corner.
Uh-huh.
And, despair and anger and sadness are up there working the controls, and all of the
Uh-huh.
core memories start to have those components. But that's what they are. They're fragments. They're not
Uh-huh.
a whole chapter of a book. They are this one distinctive moment that then
Uh-huh.
solidifies. And when they're blue and green and purple or whatever those colors were, eventually orange for anxiety, it starts to drown everything out, and then you lose
Yes.
the ability to even mix them together. And you have
Right.
to reteach yourself how to empower Joy to be on her own and to stand and, have that moment. So
Yeah.
I think as
And
we
then,
close up
oh yeah.
this one,
Mm-hmm.
I just want to ask you, how do you what advice do you have? What do you recommend for people that are in that decision phase that you found yourself in of I've got to do something for me, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not because I'm a narcissist, but because I want to heal. I want to start that step of unlearning.
Ooh. First piece of advice, always get a good therapist. Find a good one. And that might take some time, might take a few tries. I got very lucky with mine. Um, she's incredible. But like a starter time is always good to, and that was something that they talked about in one of the articles, is like give it 2 months and see how you feel about it. Like what was the response from the other side? What was like what did it bring up in you when you were going through this process? So consider that kind of stuff, but always remember you will not be able to heal in the same environment that hurt you. Um, so if you need to get out of it, you can always go back, you know. I mean, almost always, barring horrible, unforeseen circumstances, but you can go back into it. But you are the only one who has to wake up in your head every morning. That's just you. That's all you. You got to focus on what is best for that, and making that space safer, because once that's good, once you're really good and safe there, then it doesn't really matter nearly as much what else is out there. You have a safe space that you know you can get back to. So get a good therapist and then talk to them about that and make your moves from there.
And you can go back, but you go back as a different person.
You
So
do. Yeah.
it's also, I think, realizing that going back doesn't kind of regress you to that being that you were at that time. And
Really good point. Yes.
going to be real hard for them to take that. The first time I told my mother no in the last like 6 months, I think that she thought hell froze over because
Mhm.
I've never told her no. And now I'm a really I'm good at it. And I'm just like, no. And maybe it feels like a little bit of parenting for me, but it's parenting in a sense of I control the situation now, not that I'm hand holding her through a process. And that's
Yeah.
a very different Natalie than would have been 10 years ago. And I think it's going to be the same for you because even when I hear you talking about this situation now, you might have emotions, but it's not racked with the same level of fear that I think permeated the conversations in the past. So it's this sadness and grief that it had to come to this potentially. But
Mhm.
I hear that twinge of hope. uh,
Yeah.
you know, it's it's not as bad as it could have been. You haven't
Yeah.
lost everyone.
Mhm.
And maybe someday, somehow, who knows?
There's a
So
lot of power in taking that step for yourself, um and then when you process that and realize like what that entails, like standing in that power for yourself, it does change the way you look at things and how you process things. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of hope in that.
Any final thoughts for we might be up to like 10 to 15 people listening now. So, like,
Oh my gosh, look, we're famous.
totally.
Final thoughts. Feel your feelings. Don't let anybody tell them they're not valid. Um, they are not always facts, but you are still feeling them, so they are valid. And I don't know. I probably have more words of wisdom as soon as we hang up from this because I'm really a smart person, but put under the gun, I have no idea. Um, but yeah, feel your feelings. Get a therapist, even if you don't think you need one. You probably do, honestly, and that's no fault of yours. Just most people do. Life is hard. And the world is fucking crazy. I don't know if anybody has seen outside recently, but it's fucked up.
Sure is. So, with that, Jordan, thank you so much. You are going to be on multiple episodes to come. So, hopefully, people have enjoyed this conversation that we've been having. Again, Orchid virtual support for project management support for interior design, startups, small firms that are interested. She's your girl. I'm going to link her social on this podcast when we push it out. I'll also link the two articles we talked about today. And you can slide in and chat with either of us at any time if you find
Yeah.
us online about some of these things. Or if you're like, I wanted you to talk to you about this more, or you missed this topic, we'll be happy to dive back in. Reminder for everyone, this isn't therapy. This is our experience. This is what we've been through. It's why we're telling you to go to therapy. Hopefully, you can have that at some point. I know it's money, it's whatever. We can also talk about navigating that process sometime if we need to. But just really want to thank you for coming on here. This is a hard topic,
Yeah.
especially knowing you might have a sibling listen to it, that it might get back to your parents, that you chatted about them on a podcast somewhere. I see it as no attention's bad attention in this world. And maybe it brings to light some other kind of perspectives that you don't always get when it's a two-way dialogue. So, kind of
Mhm.
maybe listening and digesting some of this will be good. Otherwise, thanks everyone for listening in. We'll be coming at you again soon, probably with more topics in this general area of relationships, the uncomfortable spaces, growth personally. But that's why we're here, because hot mess to high potential and getting motivated to tackle it. So, Jordan, thank you. You're the best.
Absolutely.
I'll be down to DC soon.
Yay! Can't wait. Bye.